Again, the Sunday school that we have is a culmination of the topic on the church. And our study was focused on the Confession of Faith of the 1689 London Baptist Confession of Faith. As I mentioned before, this is a separation or a differentiation of the confession that is from the Westminster, which is Presbyterian in church government, and we are now presently discussing church government. And church government is found in chapter 26. We have already studied paragraph 1 to 7, I think. Let's check. So the first one is about the universal church, the visible saints, the church and the kingdom, the Jesus is the head of the church, the purpose of the church membership in general, and duties of church members. So today, we also discuss church polity, and today we'll be discussing the church officers and members specifically. So we will be focusing more specific on who the church officers are, how they are being appointed or chosen or elected, and what are the members in this congregation. So let us together read paragraph 8. This is not the actual text in the confession, but this is an expansion of the text. So reading together, begin. A local or particular church organized according to the mind of Christ consists of officers and members. There is no church if it only consists of members or if it only consists of officers. It is always the combination of these two because Christ has spoken his mind on this issue. The officers of the church are chosen and set apart by the church. No authority outside the local church determines who its officers will be. So, number one, we have a local church. We already understand that. Number two, that the local church is comprised of officers and members. The church cannot exist only members without officers, and officers only without members. So both officers and members should be in the church. And that these officers are chosen or set apart by the church. And it means that it is the church members who recognizes the officers. And there is no authority outside the local church that assigns the officers. So we have to understand that to be an officer of BICF, the members has to select, elect, or appoint you to become officers of the church. Nobody, say for example, NCF will assign an officer for BICF. BICF only chose or elect or appoint their own officers for themselves. The principle is, we find that in Scripture, is that the officers or the gifts that are given in the church comes from the church, within the church, not outside the church. So, and the church will recognize those gifts. Okay, so that's why it's the church that elects, appoints, or selects, or votes for those officers. Okay, continuing, reading together, begin. The people themselves choose through prayer and fasting who is to be over them in the Lord. The officers are chosen for the peculiar administrations of the ordinances, which are baptism and the Lord's Supper. They are also called to the execution of power and duty which Christ has entrusted to them. These officers are the bishops or elders and deacons. The church knows of two offices alone, elders and deacons. All other offices aside from elders and deacons are unbiblical and do not come from Jesus Christ, the head of the church. Okay, so the first thing is the election. So the election is being done by the members of the church. We already discussed that before. Okay, they choose through prayer. Yes, the people themselves choose. Okay, and then one particular job or responsibility of officers is to conduct baptism and the Lord's Supper. As I mentioned, it does not come naturally that when you become a Christian, you start baptizing people and you start holding a Lord's Supper. Okay? It is the function of the church and it is the responsibility of the leaders of the church. And we have seen here that the leaders of the church are elders or bishops and deacons. We will expound that more in detail. Okay. We will discuss separately the elders and the deacons. Okay. Why do we have this group of people? Church officers called the overseers, bishops, and the deacons. Because in most of the greetings that the Apostle Paul, in writing, he will always refer to these officers, the overseers and deacons. Example of this is found in Philippians chapter 1, verse 1. Reading together, begin. Paul and Timothy, servants of Christ Jesus, to all the saints in Christ Jesus who are at Philippi with the overseers and deacons. So, it is the natural progression of the letter of the Apostle Paul to address the letter to the members of the church together with the officers. And the officers are identified as overseers and deacons. Okay, you will notice I'm putting emphasis on as Kim would say, yeah, it will always sound. So we will discuss more on that. In Acts 20 verse 17, okay, reading together, begin. Now from Miletus he sent to Ephesus and called the elders of the church to come to him. And when they came to him, he said to them, and then this will be the discussion or the message of the Apostle Paul to the elders, and he will refer to the elders as we find in verse 28. Reading together, begin. Take heed unto yourselves and to all the flock in which the Holy Spirit had made you bishops to feed the church of the Lord, which he purchased with his own blood. Okay, what do we notice here? So we notice that in Acts chapter 20, the apostle referred to a specific position, a specific office which he called elders of the church. He called the elders of the church. And then he preached to them, okay, persuaded them, and referred to them as bishops, overseers, managers of the church. Okay? And then he said to feed. And the literal meaning of feed is to pastor, to shepherd. What do we understand here? We understand that the word elder, bishop, and pastor is of the same meaning. There is no difference between elder, pastor, and bishop. That is how we understand as Baptists. Now, the first thing that you will notice in the New Testament when you study is that there is no office of the priest. There is no office of the prophet. No office of kings. Okay? So I mentioned already that they are inventing. A lot of churches are inventing offices. And therefore, they have their own prophets. They have their priests. So we know that Roman Catholics have their priests, continue to have priests. And there are some churches that have kings. Okay? So they continue the offices in the Old Testament. And in the New Testament, so they started appointing apostles. Okay? Apostle Ayan, Apostle Bien. Okay, very awkward terms. So these are some of the things that probably the other churches will assign as officers, but we do not have that. What we have are only, we call the bishop, elder, pastor, we call it our pastor. Okay? And sometimes you use elder also in a way in similar responsibility as that of the pastor. Okay, we will discuss later in more detail. The second one, okay, more, okay, in paragraph number 9, election of officers. Reading together, begin. As paragraph 9 has the church, so this paragraph goes on to tell us how these men are to be chosen by the church. The church is to seek to call those who are fitted and gifted by the Holy Spirit, who evidence the fruits of their profession and walk. Bishops or elders should be chosen by the common suffrage of the church itself, which means that they should be chosen by collective vote, and the church itself, as the modern translation puts it. Okay? So collective vote of the whole church. This means I term this direct democracy. So we have representative democracy. We vote somebody and then that somebody will vote for us in Congress. But in the church, we don't vote for a representative. We vote directly who will be the officers of the church. And the majority vote, sometimes churches would say it should be a unanimous vote. So it's like the jury. Okay, if you cannot come up with an anonymous vote, you have to discuss again, and then vote again, and then persuade those who will not agree to have the unanimous votation. Which means that it's not only a matter of getting 2/3 or a majority or 3/4. It has to be like a unanimous decision of the church to vote for their officers. Okay, that is our common understanding. So, both the deacons and the bishops or elders are chosen by election or suffrage, and we call it the collective vote. Now, there are two examples we will find in Acts chapter 6, okay, when there was the votation of the first deacons, as we understand it, and even with the appointment of Paul and Barnabas to become the missionary to the Gentiles. So there was like a prayer, and then there was a consensus in the church of Antioch, okay, in chapter 14, to assign Barnabas and Paul, okay, to become missionaries to the Gentiles. Okay, those are just examples. Okay, continuing, begin. The church is to vote for those who are to be chosen and ordained as elders. Furthermore, they are to be solemnly set apart by fasting and prayer. Finally, if there are elders in the church, they should have the imposition or laying on hand from the eldership of the church. A deacon is to be chosen in the like manner. Interestingly, the fasting part is left out because Scripture does not mention fasting in connection with the choice of the deacons in Acts chapter 6, although prayer and laying on of hands is mentioned. Okay, so what we're saying here here is that when we are electing officers, particularly the elders or pastors of the church, what do? We fast. We do not feast. Okay, so that's what is interesting about this, the expression of the Word of God. Okay, there is fasting. But for deacons, there is no need for fasting. Just separation of the role of deacons and pastors. Now, what we will notice immediately when we study the New Testament is that there is always the S, elders and deacons. So, the principle is the plurality of elders and deacons. What does it mean? It means that in every church, there should be at least 2 elders and at least 2 deacons. Okay? Those are the principles that we find in the script, in the New Testament examples. And so every time that the church elders are mentioned or church deacons are mentioned in these passages, all the time, they are always plural. Acts 14, Titus 1, 1 Timothy 4, James 5, 1 Peter 5, Hebrews 13. Every time they are greeted in the letters of the Apostle Paul, it's always plural. Okay? A church should never be ruled by one pastor or elder. Ooh! Okay? First time I hear that. Okay? Because in the Philippines, there is now no such thing. That is an animal. They call it an animal with 2 heads. Okay, is a dragon. Okay, it will be like chaos. But the Scripture, by its own way of what you call this balancing, what do you call the 3 branches of government? What do? The judiciary, the executive, they check and balance. So the principles of the organization of the New Testament is to check and balance, to make sure that there is no dictator in the church, is that there should be at least 2. And the principle of the 2 is that one can tell the other what is wrong with him. At the same time, both of them can check and balance each other. The problem is if there is only one and nobody can tell him he is wrong, and he must be always right. That is the root cause of the Bishop of Rome becoming the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church. That is where it began. When nobody can tell him he is wrong, and he always assumes that he is right because he is the Bishop of Rome. So that this is the principle that we find a pattern in the New Testament. It goes with the deacons as well. Okay? I will be fast. Okay. The first question is, are there women deacons? Okay? So when there are 2 lists of qualifications for elders and deacons. We find the first one in 1 Timothy chapter 3, and the other one is in Titus chapter 1, I think. Okay, so the chapter 3, there is a mention in 3:11, their wives, okay, after the deacons should have this responsibility, and then their wives. So the understanding is like the deacons' wives likewise must be dignified, nor not slanderers, nor sober-minded, faithful in all things. But the newer version, based on the understanding of the Greek, it is not wives. It is actually women. Women, in like manner, grave, not false accusers, vigilant, faithful in all things. What they're saying is, there are deacons and there are women deacons. Women deaconess. Okay? That is one of the interpretation which we practice actually in BICF. Who are the deacons here? Hands up. Okay? Who are the deacons? Okay? So the word deacon is a servant, a bond servant. Who are the servants in this church? Okay? We identify the servants as officers. If you are an officer, you are the servant of the church, you are responsible for the church, and you are in fact executing or practicing being a deacon or deaconess, even though we do not choose the word. Okay, we have to understand that diakonos is a Greek transliteration. We don't have the word deacon. It is diakonos in Greek. So we just translate it. But actual translation are servants. But of course, we know that the president is our servant. Okay? They are the officers, but they are our servants. The senators, the congressmen, they are officers and yet they are servants. So similarly, that is the structure that we understand with regards to women deacons. Okay. Where are the women pastors? Okay. So why do we not believe in women pastors? Why don't we have Pastor Alice or Pastor Avin, okay? Pastora Avin or Pastora Alice or Pastora Awit, okay? Anybody who looks to me, Pastora Elaine, okay? So why do we not have women pastors? When everybody, even if you watch YouTube, okay, some of the famous pastors are women pastors. And they speak and they are better than men pastors. Definitely, they are better than me and Pastor Ayan. But why don't we have women pastors? Okay, this is what paragraph 9 explains. Reading together, begin. Paul in 1 Timothy 2:12-15 makes clear that women are not to preach or teach the church, nor they are exercise authority over men. This clear word, just before the qualifications of the elders in chapter 3, makes clear that Paul understood the office of eldership to be exclusive to qualified men. Therefore, biblically speaking, there are no women pastors, and those who claim themselves as women pastors do so contrary to biblical teaching. It is important to note what Paul actually says, I do not permit a woman to teach. So when you read the 1 Timothy chapter 2, he says, you cannot exercise authority over men, women. And then in chapter 3, these are the qualifications of the elders. So therefore, you will see already disqualification of the women because they cannot exercise authority over men, and then the qualification of elders. The first thing that it mentions, they should be men. Okay? So that you will understand it's very easy. I mean, for the whole 19th century, 1900 years, people understand it. It's only now, because of the woke, because of the whatever, women's equal rights, women's whatever, okay, that the case of women pastors has been raised and has been approved by so many churches. Okay, let's see the text. This is the text, the proof text of the Apostle Paul. Again, this is the inspired interpretation of the Apostle Paul of the text in the Old Testament. There are texts in the Old Testament that already gives us, okay, the regulation. And we read in chapter 2, verse 12, together begin, I do not permit a woman to teach or to exercise authority over a man. Rather, she is to remain quiet. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and become a transgressor. Okay, so the first thing is, he is not permitted to teach or exercise authority over a man. Okay? Remain quiet doesn't mean that nobody will speak here. Okay? Because in other passages, immediately in other passages, they will tell that women should speak, should pray, should do a lot by using their voice. Okay? So it doesn't mean that quiet. The quiet thing is on the exercise of authority and teaching. Verse 13 is the foundation. We call this the creation ordinance. Creation order. Even before before sin entered into the world, there is already order. God already ordered. And one of the orders He made is the male headship. He created two beings, a male and a female, although the female came from the male. But the male was half cut into two to become a male and a female. But then the insistence is that the headship was assigned to the male. Okay? That was it. That's it. Period. He was formed first, the end. He's therefore the head. That's the only argument of Paul. Can you prove otherwise? That is not true. That Eve was created first. If not, then it should be men headship. The male should be the head of the family. He should be head of the church. Okay? Second to the family is the church. Of course, we don't extend this to the government. Okay? Civil government. Oh, we don't want women to be president. Yeah, I don't. That's that's too much interpretation. We just focus on family and the church, which is governed by Jesus Christ. There is no Christian country or Christian government. There is no Christian nation. Okay? Christianity is an individual relationship. Okay, next. Women pastors again. Reading together, begin. Paul did not think that women were stupid or were not intelligent. Otherwise, he would have said, a woman can't preach. His wording does not consist of concern itself with the abilities of women, rather with the God-ordained order in the family, which is to be copied in the family of God, the church. Women may preach and teach other women and children, but they may not teach and preach on the gathering of God's people where men are also present. Okay, so the statement here are very clear. So it doesn't mean that women cannot teach. In fact, a lot of women are better than men in teaching. That's a fact. Okay? We cannot ignore that fact. But then, just because he can, he should, or he will. Because specifically, the Apostle Paul said, you can't. You cannot. Doesn't mean that you don't have the ability, but I will not allow you. God will not allow you. So that basically is the principle. Now, why are there women pastors? Because women in general, in the Old and in the New Testament, when they rise, like the judges in Israel, in the time of the judges, it was a condemnation of the men. Men are being condemned because they do not exercise authority. That's why God has to raise women as a condemnation to the men. That's why it's a call for men to rise up and to exercise authority, exercise responsibility. Okay, we remember the judges. And the man who's supposed to be judged refused. And then I think Deborah, who exercised, who became the judge. Okay. Because the man doesn't want to exercise authority. So basically, if you see there is a church where women are pastors, it's a condemnation that men there are stupid. Okay? And it is also an encouragement to us, BICF, that we also rise to the occasion. Men, okay? Men should lead the prayers, should do the meditation, should occasionally do Sunday school. Men, I will discuss later why all men, not only some men are able to teach or to preach. Okay. Work of pastors. Reading together. So I'm running fast because we have paragraph 15. I want to finish this. I don't want to be like Pastor Ayan who cannot finish Ephesians chapter 6. So I'll finish my paragraph 15 by reading, just by reading. Okay, reading together, begin. Pastors who are elders are to be taken upon with the service of Christ in His churches. Their work consists in the ministry of the word and prayer, being careful for their souls as they must give an account for how they served His church and served Him. Therefore, it is incumbent on the church to whom this minister not only to give them all due respect for the work that they must do, but also to provide and communicate to them of all their good things. Okay, so this is now giving honor to honor is due. Thank you for the gifts last Sunday. So some form of honor, we get some envelopes. Pastor, how much did you get? I didn't know what I got. My Ma'am A got my envelope. Okay, so this is the work of the pastor. I don't need to expand on this. Okay, reading together again, begin. As the work upon them is hard and requires a lot of time, so the provision should come from the church so that they would not be entangled in secular affairs, but may have a comfortable supply by which they may live and exercise hospitality towards others. This is required by the law of nature, namely, that they should be paid for the labor. But it is also based upon the express order of our Lord Jesus, who said that the laborers deserves his wages. Of course, the paragraph 10 focuses on full-time pastors. So, pastor, me, so most of the pastors here in Thailand is what we call tent making. So while we are working full-time, we are working in the church part-time. That's why we need to be, as much as possible, as many elders as possible so that you can spread the responsibility of leadership. And also at the same time, the officers as well. So the more is for Thailand, the merrier, okay, for the work of the ministry. Okay, next. Work of preaching. Okay, here is what I'm saying earlier. Reading together, begin. The bishops or pastors of the church are to be instant in preaching the word. But other brothers, also gifted and fitted by the Holy Spirit, and approved and called by the church, may preach to the congregation. The work of preaching is not only confined and limited to them that are pastors or elders. You see that even in 1689, 400 years ago, they already, my arithmetic is, even a long time ago, they already recognize that there are what we call lay preachers, lay teachers. So not you should not be afraid, because I didn't go to a Bible school or similar, you cannot teach or preach or do meditation or no. Okay? But the grace of God, you will be given the gift, okay, to share the gospel, to teach the gospel, and to preach the gospel. That's why paragraph 11 recognizes the fact that the Bible tells us that there are people that preach even though they are not elders or bishops. Example is Stephen. So we will read that Stephen was a deacon or assigned to be a deacon, but he was a very eloquent preacher. Okay, so that's an example. So encourage everybody to, from time to time, teach and do meditation, and eventually, if everybody is happy, you can preach. A pastor, we will, as Pastor Wood said, any time of the day we will be out here. We will not be here. My contract, for example, is only good for 3 years. God, what they call that? By the grace of God. What happens if we were not here anymore? Okay? And men are not rising to the occasion. Men does not want to preach. And then you will see women started preaching because men would not preach. Otherwise, we will close the church because nobody is preaching, and the ministry of the church is the ministry of the word. Yeah, so we have to, Pastor Gary, Brother Gary, Pastor Marlon, Pastor John, okay, Pastor Tim. Okay, so those are things that we have to consider. Paragraph 12, church membership. Reading together, begin. All believers, when they have opportunity, are called and bound to join themselves to particular churches. And being admitted unto the privileges of a church, they are also under the censures and the government of that particular church according to the rule of Christ. By joining a church, we're not only agreeing to worship and fellowship with each other, but also to fall under church discipline if we deserve it, and submitting to the eldership and government of the church. So the emphasis in chapter 12, like the one that we have, I think, in chapter 5, paragraph 5 or 6, is that all believers, okay, are naturally have to join in particular churches. That is the natural flow being a Christian. You become a Christian, you become a church member. You become a Christian, you are baptized, you become a church member, you take the Lord's Supper. That's it. And then you become the officer of the church. Okay, so those are the flow of the church membership. So what they're saying is that every believer is a church member. Okay, that's it. Whether you are in the Philippines, in Bangkok, or in whatever country you are going, God will assign you to. Next. Paragraph 13. Why do you have to become a member and a responsible member? Reading together, begin. Church members who have an issue with another church member while having performed their duty required of them towards the person they are offended of should not disturb any church order. They should not seek to distort the way in which a church runs because of their issues and problems. In fact, they should not even absent themselves from the assemblies of the church or administration of any ordinances. As long as they have these issues between them, they are to attend church as they wait upon Christ in the further proceedings of the church, who is our judge. What they're saying here is the practical, practicality that this is a church of sinners. And we sin, and we have our own ego, we have our own personality, and we conflict with each other. And you do not absent in the church just because you have some conflicts. In fact, aside from this one, you do not absent in the church, period. Okay, because being a member of the church, you will have assignments, whether you like it or not. Once you become a member of the church, you have your assignment. washing the dishes, cooking food, preparing for food, giving your tithes and offerings, giving your faith promise. Once you absent yourself, once you do not attend anymore, who's going to wash the dishes? Who's going to cook? Who's going to give the tithes? So you are disturbing the church order. Okay, you are disturbing the church. That's why every member is required, okay, to be present in each and every time we have the church meetings and church worship. That's the principle. If we have some conflicts, if we do not like the color of the whatever that is, we don't like the face of somebody else, okay, we do not absent ourselves. We do not absent ourselves. That is very basic. That we continue and let God can manage or settle every dispute, whatever that may be. Okay? So that's paragraph 13, very practical in church church discipline, church order. 14, prayer to all churches. Probably this can be part of our May discussion. We do not pray only for our church, but we also pray for the other churches. That's why it's good that we started praying for NCF in a particular way. Because sometimes we only pray randomly, we remember NCF. So we have like a regular time to pray with other other churches, not only with BICF. Reading together begin. As each church and all the members of it are bound to pray continually for the good and prosperity of all the churches of Christ in all places and upon all occasions to further everyone within the bounds of the places and callings in the exercise of the gifts and graces, so the churches, when planted by the providence of God, so as they may enjoy opportunity and advantage for it, ought to hold communion among themselves for the peace, increase of love, and mutual edification. So churches are actually encouraged to have fellowship with each other. That's why having fellowship with NCF, with TMCF, or with other churches is being encouraged. That is according to paragraph 15, because we have to recognize that not only do we have the local church, we also have the recognition of the universal church. We're not the only Christians here in Thailand. There are so many others, and we can fellowship with them. Lastly, yes, all right. Okay, reading together, begin. In cases of difficulties or differences, either in point of doctrine or administration, wherein either the churches in general are concerned, or any one church in their peace, union, and edification, or any member or members of any church are injured in or by any proceedings and censures not agreeable to truth and order, it is according to the mind of Christ that many churches holding communion together do by their messengers meet to consider and give their advice in and about that matter in difference to be reported to all the churches concerned. Howbeit these messengers assembled are not entrusted with any church power properly so called, and with any jurisdiction over the churches themselves to exercise any censures either over any churches or persons, or to impose their determination on the churches or officers. So many words. Okay. So what we're saying here? What if this church cannot settle their problem? BICF, okay, cannot settle problems. So a member is fighting against the pastor, so there is conflict, and within the church, it cannot some sort cannot be resolved. So the paragraph 15 says we can have interchurch advisory. We can actually ask some other churches to help us. Okay, that's the principle. And the principle here is churches that have the same communion with us, the same understanding, meaning that probably the same Baptist confession or Baptist distinctive. So there we have fellowship. We can ask for advice. The principle here is we are only advisory or counsel. They cannot decide for the church. The church problem is the church solution, or the church has to solve its own problem. Okay, so that's the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. What happens in BICF stays in BICF. So, meaning that we have to resolve the problem. But then sometimes if the problem is, especially the problem is the pastor, okay, and if you only have one pastor, and you cannot tell or he will not agree to be told, okay, so you may approach another pastor of like-minded church, okay, and then ask them to help, and then advise, and then probably talk to our pastor, and then so just to encourage, but then no decision can be made, okay, in behalf of the church by another church. Okay? We call it church, in Reformed Baptist, we call it fraternity or fraternal. Church fraternal. We do not believe in church convention. We do not agree that the church will have a council and then the churches will decide for another church. We don't believe that. We do not believe in denominations, meaning that we become single local churches combining together to become a mega church, and then decisions are being made by some sort of a council. Okay, we don't do that. In the church that we attended before, the Christian Reformed Church. So you have in the church what they call the consistory. So this is the council. And within that consistory, it goes up to a hierarchy of probably 3 or 4 churches around the area, the district. We call this classes. And then from classes, you go to a regional level, they called it the synod. And then from the synod, again, another group of synods, we call it the council. So basically, that is the structure of the Presbyterian running the churches. Or, it's a Presbyterian. We don't have that kind of organization. 2 questions. Any question?
But again, yung the Jerusalem Council. So you mentioned you don't believe in the council, right? So how about the apostles? They had the Jerusalem Council. So it means
okay. So if you look particularly with the council in Jerusalem, and you look at who are the one leading the council, okay? So there is no council. In fact, a lot of times this is being referred to by the Roman Catholic Church as the magisterium, the concept of magisterium, the concept of the body of bishops deciding for the whole church. That's not true. Okay, the fact is there are 12 apostles. They are called specifically the 12. When you read your Gospels, when you read the book of Acts, they are referred to as the 12. They're supposed to be the Power Rangers. Okay? They have all the power. And yet when you go to the Council of Jerusalem, it was James, the brother of Jesus, who is an unbeliever until Christ has, when Christ raised, he was the last person that Christ has shown. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, you will read that. And he presented himself to James. So, but James was the most powerful person in the council. But then when you look at the testimonies that are being given, it was a sort of consensus that has already been agreed upon by the local churches. The local churches already agreed upon on what is their presentation. That Jews and Gentiles are one and the same. Pastor said that already in Ephesians chapter 2. One and the same. So, every local churches already agreed on that and they come together, and there are some Jewish, what they call this Jewish Jewish proselytes and Judaizers. There are some presentation of the Judaizers that said, oh, before you become a Christian, you have to be a tuli. Okay? You're not allowed to be supot. So everyone, if you become a Christian, tuli. Okay, so that was the basic argument. And you have to follow all the dietary restrictions, all the culture of the Jews. So all the churches, basically local churches, did not agree with that. And therefore, when they had a discussion, and James presented to them what is already in their mind, they all agree. So basically, James said, oh, we do not have to apply to them the circumcision, the dietary restrictions. And they all agreed. And therefore, James said, okay, we will write them this to all the churches, that this is the understanding of the people of God. So basically, that's the council in Jerusalem. We don't have that council anymore because we have already the witness of the Bible. So everything that we decide, which should come from the writings of the apostles. The foundations are the apostles and the prophets, the apostles of the New Testament, and the prophets of the Old Testament, which means the Old and the New Testament, which is our Bible today. That's the sole basis of our authority. Second question. Do we have the food already? Not yet. Oh, question. Sister Avin.
Pwede magsalita?
Yes, please go on.
Kasi kanina, yung
Please speak in English. I cannot understand you.
you said particularly that women cannot teach.
Cannot
It
preach.
is in the and preach in the context also that they cannot take the lead over men. Like that. Diba? So, does it mean that they cannot teach other women as well?
They can. We said in Titus chapter 2, already mentioned that they can teach children and other women. Okay, so some more questions because the food is not yet up.
How about teaching unbelievers na may gay? Bawa, nag-mix. For example, the group is mixed with women and some unbeliever na may. Is that possible na ma-teach pa rin sila?
Private capacity. Priscilla and Aquila, they confronted Apollo, Kibuloy, and they told them privately that not very accurate. You're just telling them to repent, but you should also teach them to believe in Jesus for salvation. So basically, Aquila and Priscilla did that. So in private capacity. So yes.
growing up kasi sa practice na upbringing, hindi talaga yung term na elder ganun ka-common sa amin. So, in our church, what is because we are used to pastors, deacons, officers, so what is the...
So we have no problem. We have no problem because as long as we understand that the words in the Bible used as bishops, elders, and pastors, the same refers to the same office, regardless of how you call them. Okay, whether elder, pastor, or bishop is no problem. Even just a simple brother is okay. Okay. So the title, that title is not very important.
So as long as it doesn't hold like a hierarchical.
Yes. Not that we understand that bishop is higher than the elder or the pastor. That actually arose in the development of the Roman Catholic Church. So in the early church history, you will find the rise of the bishops. Everybody are called bishops. All the pastors and elders are called bishops at the early church. And then until such time that there arose the Bishop of Rome, the Bishop of Jerusalem, the Bishop of Antioch, the Bishop of Alexandria, and eventually the Bishop of Constantinople. And they rise as powerful bishops that can influence other bishops, that they became like archbishops. And from the archbishops rose the Pope. Everybody is called Pope. Yes, everybody is called Pope in the early church because the Pope is only means Papa, which means father. So it's typical in the 1st, 2nd century that people will call, the leaders will be called Papa, father, because the connotation of elder. Elder. So instead of elder, father. So just like, for example, me, okay, Kuya, call me Kuya. Eventually, when I'm very, very old, you call me Tatay. That's father. And you are still young, you call me Lolo, grandfather. So it's still a father. So the word Papa actually is common practice in the early church. Everybody, all the pastors, elders, and bishops are called Papa until it become the Pope of Rome. Yes.
Why there are pastors who refer to their positions like other pastors are not called reverend? Why are other pastors has reverend, this and
that? That actually is titles that are not as no biblical merit or basis. Okay? The fact is, elders, bishops, pastors in the New Testament has no degrees. They don't go to Bible schools. They don't go to Bible seminaries. Okay, they are just being taught. Okay, they just study the Bible, and they become pastors by the gifts that are given to them. And why I specifically refuse to use the word reverend, because the word reverend is only referred to Jesus. That was only on one occasion that the word reverend in the Bible was used, and that specifically was referred to Jesus. So Jesus is only the reverend one, not anybody. So there are a lot of people that will always want to have titles. Okay? I don't know, even John MacArthur does not refer to himself as doctor. He is a doctor. He has doctoral degrees. But people would always like doctor, yeah, doctor, pastor. Yeah. The more titles you have, the merrier. Okay? Yes, brother. Kala ko na natanong din si Nico eh. Stretching pala. Okay? Next question.
So if ever walang elder, walang deacon, pwede mo ba mag-preach? Walang
Di ka nakakinig.
Just to round it up.
Okay, can you repeat your question please? Thank you.
If ever, kasi sa
Within the church.
may iba wala talagang elder, so walang deacon, walang pastor.
So the men will not even stand up.
Ang babae pwede lang
Pwede yung
mag-preach.
babae na mag-lead.
That case actually happened with Elizabeth Elliot. Elizabeth Elliot is husband. Her husband is a famous missionary to the Indians. So, what's the name of her husband? So he was I think he was killed. I don't know if he was eaten. I forgot. Okay, but then on that foundation they were able to what's the name?
The husband is Jim.
Jim Elliot. Okay, so they were able to put up a church. And then there were male Christians, okay? And Elizabeth Elliot really tried hard, okay, to teach these men to preach. They teach him, he really tried hard, okay, that the men, even though they're new Christians, he taught them and then give them the equipment, equip them to be able to speak. Of course, in the worst case scenario, I would understand that. Okay? The worst case scenario. Why not? But that is not the regulative principle. Okay? Just because you can preach, you will. No, you cannot. That's the order of Apostle Paul as the apostle. Other?
Brad,
Say.
are there any specific duties and responsibilities of the elders that differs from prophets, apostles? Because in the Old Testament, the prophets ordered the congregation to appoint elders of the 12 tribes of Israel. Then in the New Testament, the apostles also ordered the church to appoint elders too. And in Revelation, God appointed 24 elders.
Okay. So we have to understand, elders, basically they're called elders because they are old. Okay. So that's some sort of idea of elders. So elders are old, so they're called elders. Always in a community, in a village, you call the older people because they're more experienced. That is the first understanding of the elder. But then the elder is not only because he is old. Now he is able to exercise authority over others. And therefore, the typical word for elder has been engrafted the word overseer or the manager or supervisor, and also the feeding, the teaching, which is the work of the pastor or the shepherd. So the question is,
The specific duties and responsibilities that differs the elders and the
Ah,
pastors.
okay. So, I go to a very difficult, I did not discuss this, but because the food is not there. There are actually two works for an elder pastor bishop. So, elder pastor bishop, the same person. But they can have two separate work. The first one is to preach, ministry of the word. The second one can be administration. Okay? So a pastor may not preach, but he can administer. He can manage the church. So you have what they call the preaching elder or preaching pastor and the administrative pastor. So the scripture very clear on that. That's why it says that those who manage well and do preach should have double honor. Yeah? So meaning there are two jobs, but if you can do the two jobs by one person, he has double honor. But the point is that the church can assign a male for the management, but he does not actually preach in regularity. But of course, it is required for each and every elder to be able to teach the Bible. Of course, the first qualification is to be able to handle the Bible, to handle the Word, understand the Word. Okay.
So not necessarily church administration.
Meaning,
Similar to mayor and city administrator. So there is a mayor and there is a city administrator.
okay.
So in the absence
So,
of the mayor, the city administrator takes
okay, so as I said before, there is no hierarchy. Whether you are a preaching pastor or a managing pastor, okay, you have the same level. You are on the same level. I personally, based on my readings of the Bible, do not believe on hierarchy of pastors. The terms that we are using are senior pastor, junior pastor, youth pastor, evangelism pastor, and then everybody is under the senior pastor. We do not believe that. Okay. So pastors are pastors whether they are what they call I do not believe that whether in whatever capacity they are doing. So there will be younger pastor, there will be older pastor. Of course, older pastors can exercise authority, more authority, but then it has to be balanced with the younger pastors because younger pastors has also the enthusiasm and the initiative in the church. So God always gives a balance to the graces that He provides in the church. Okay? So I think we can prepare for the food already. So may I request Miss Alice to close us in prayer. Okay.